Hey guys, I'm Ernst and I have returned finally. I know it's been a while since I've last made a video, but that's because I've been quite busy trying to finish up school. I've had a lot of assignments to finish, a lot of deadlines to meet, which luckily enough I managed to do quite well. So that means that at the moment I have a lot more time on my hands, so I can start creating content again, which is a really good thing because while I was trying to finish up my assignments, I've actually been getting a couple questions, a couple interesting questions about a couple of interesting subjects, which I really want to answer in future videos. But for today, I thought it'd be good to address a certain topic that I know a lot of people are interested in and a lot of people struggle with, and that is motivation in art. Over the past year, I've been following an art course, and I've noticed in my class as well as in other artists online that motivation and the fear of getting burned out is a real issue, and not a lot of people really know how to cope with it, which is kind of interesting that so many people are terrified of something that they don't know is gonna happen. Anyway, a lot of people have been asking me, like, how do you stay motivated? How do you get over art block? Like, what do you do when you're burnt out on creating art? Which honestly is a rather difficult question to ask people, and an even more difficult question probably to answer correctly. And that's mainly because this isn't a question that has one right or wrong answer. When you think about it, like every single individual is unique, which means that everyone has a different coping mechanism for these sort of things. Which also means that there isn't one like holy advice that I can give you that is gonna fix everything. That just doesn't exist. That's unreasonable. But I can try my best at providing my perspective on these issues, and hopefully you can take something away from it that can help you get over this like burnout or this sense of being demotivated. Alright, as some of you may know, I come from a physiotherapist background. This means that I have a fairly analytical way of going about things, and that's exactly how I plan to kind of explain my interpretation of these sort of issues. Because the way I like to handle is I like to define what something is before I try to solve it. So in order to define this, I'm gonna make a quick analogy. In my opinion, art skills are a muscle. They are a muscle that need to be honed, they need to be trained in order to improve, in order to get better. But what happens as well is muscle can be overused. When it gets overused, it can fairly easily develop into an overuse injury, which is, in my opinion, what you could compare a burnout or art block to. Because when you think about it, an overuse injury develops whenever the workload of whatever you're doing exceeds the load capacity that you possess at the moment, right? This could mean that maybe you're being a bit too ambitious and taking on too much stuff at the same time. Which is something I've noticed a lot of artists actually have trouble with, and that's mainly due to a lack of focus. Because imagine you just want to improve and you take on all of the different subjects at the same time. Obviously that's gonna be way too much and you're gonna drown in the amount of information. But when you cut that information into bite-sized pieces and when you formulate a structured plan that you can follow, that is way easier to digest and way easier to maintain. Because looking at myself, for example, right? Like, I haven't always been a very productive artist. I've only started being productive and doing daily studies last year after my mentorship with Tyler Edlin. And that's because he taught me all of these different exercises and these different fundamentals that I needed to learn. And he kind of broke the entire painting process down into steps, into digestible pieces, which I could then use as a basis to study from, which is exactly what I did. I mean, over the past year, I've probably made over 700 paintings at least, not counting the school stuff. And while to some of you maybe this seems impressive, when you think about it, I broke these studies down into different subjects, which made them very maintainable, which caused my workload to be fairly low, while still doing a lot of work, if that even makes sense. So, if we go back to the analogy we made earlier about the overuse injuries, if you have an injury, you go to the doctor, and 9 times out of 10 this doctor will say, rest, take a break, wait to see if it gets better, right? Now, in the long term, this may actually benefit you. You may feel a bit more refreshed, you may start feeling better, a bit more motivated to start doing art, but in the long term, this is very dangerous advice to hand out. Now, this is mainly because when you think about it, if you rest a muscle for a while, the muscle gets weaker, right? Because you're not using it. So it starts to get weaker and weaker. And then when you start resuming the same exercise afterwards, the muscle will be at a weaker point than where it was when you were experiencing the issues the first time, which means that the issues will return faster the second time. Now, does it mean that you can't rest for these sort of issues like art block or burnout or just a sense of demotivation? No. Please do rest. Rest is important, but it is also important that we interpret rest in the right way. Rest is always relative. Rest isn't an absolute, which is where a lot of people go wrong. Like, instead of putting your pencil down for 2 weeks and not practicing art, try to keep yourself busy with other stuff. Maybe lower the workload to a place where it is manageable for you to continue doing art. If that doesn't work, look for another output for your art. Like, instead of maybe drawing with on your digital tablet in Photoshop, maybe pick up a sketchbook and go do some sketching outside, or even just go for walks and look around and try to keep your mind active and thinking about art, so that art muscle doesn't atrophy, so that doesn't get weaker, right? Because when you keep this art muscle stimulated and then you will resume whatever you were doing earlier, you will actually be in a stronger place where you can continue doing what you were doing, hopefully for a longer period of time before you start feeling the sense of being burnt out again, which is the whole idea. Like, if you have an injury, you want to strengthen the muscle so you don't get an injury in the future. The only thing that you need to be wary of is that you strengthen it in the right way, which is why I was talking about being structured and having a plan and goals. That's very important when you actually try to improve. So to summarize, the things to keep in mind, in my opinion, when it comes to art block, is to first know about the issue, define it and learn more about it, learn where it comes from, learn what it is that is making you feel demotivated, what is making your workload this large or this hard to manage. And then afterwards you can kind of try to figure out how you can break this down into separate pieces so that you can make it more manageable. Now, another thing I'd like to mention that really helps with these sort of issues as well is to look for peers. So look for people that have the same level of interest, around the same skill level at least, and have the same goals in mind, and try to work on these things together. Most of the studies I did last year, out of the over 700 studies I did, probably 500 of them were done in a voice chat with a couple of friends. And this has really made it a lot easier for me to kind of find this routine to get into studying. It's a lot more fun when you're studying together. You can get immediate feedback from each other. You can immediately help each other out if need be, and kind of guide each other on the right path. Whenever someone's doing something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, you just point it out and you continue on in the right direction, right? which makes the whole experience a lot more easy and a lot more fun in general. Finally, there's one more point I'd like to make, and that's please never be afraid to ask people for help when you're experiencing something like this. Ask for advice, ask for a structured plan if you don't know how to approach stuff like this. It's always better to catch these things early on, because otherwise you might find yourself ending up in this downward spiral, which is never a good thing. So please feel free to send messages whenever you're struggling with something. Like most artists in the community are fairly friendly and will happily help you out with whatever you need to do, as long as you ask for it like in a respectful fashion, of course. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care, guys.